Hello and welcome to Think Watercolour. Today I'm going to do another demonstration with a palette of just 3 colours to paint these pears on the tree. For the yellow I'm using Aureolin, which has a green bias, as does the blue for this demo, which is Prussian Blue. For the red I'm going to use burnt sienna, which is a lovely red earth colour. These 3 colours are ideal for this subject, allowing me to mix perfect greens for both the pears and the leaves. The paper I'm using today is Saunders Waterford 300g rough paper. I'm just using a couple of Escoda perla brushes and a small rigger. For the branch of the tree I'm starting with a thin mix of burnt sienna and Prussian blue. Always working from, as I do, from the lightest lights to the darkest darks. And to start with the pears I'm using just a very light mix of pure Aureolin, just to get that yellow background in, again the lightest light. Just added a touch more Prussian blue to the Aureolin just to start this lightest green, building up wet in wet just to get the shading on the pears how I want them. I have no reference for this image, it's just something I've conjured up out of my imagination. I've painted pears on the tree before, so I've got a rough idea of how they should look. Just adding a little bit more pigment to the mix to darken the green a little bit, and just starting to define the three-dimensionality of the pears with stronger, darker mix, more pigment, wet in wet. As these wet in wet washes dry, you need to make sure you've got more pigment going into each wash as you add it. Otherwise you'll end up with runbacks or cauliflowers. If you're not sure about which colours to mix for a subject, just try them out on a piece of rough paper first, just to make sure that the colours you're using are going to be what you want to end up with. I know my palette really well, so finding the right combination is fairly easy for me, but that's experience. Practice, practice, practice with your palette. Get to know it, get to know what colours work together, which ones don't, and just learn from your mistakes. I don't know any artist who doesn't make mistakes all the time. Just made a darker mix now to put the first wash of the leaves in. The leaves are quite dark compared to the actual pears, so I can afford to start with a slightly darker wash. Just getting the basic shapes in. Just mixed up some of the burnt sienna there just to start working on this thin branch. It's a very gnarly branch with lots of bumps and lumps. Just added some Prussian blue to the mix just to darken it. Prussian blue and burnt sienna combine really well to make these really dark greens and browns. Just building it up as I go along, wet in wet. I'll come back a bit later and darken some of these patches a bit more. I'm just running a rigger just a damp rigger just to smooth things together and let them a bit of water to let them blend. This is some more burnt sienna just for the stalks at the ends of the pears where they join the tree. It's adding the stems of the leaves. One quick movement, don't fiddle with it. I'm just starting to add some slightly darker washes on the leaves just to give them a little bit of depth and character. I like to build these things up in layers, and I'll probably darken them a bit more later. Just tidying up the edge of the pear there. Just mixed up a slightly darker green with a little bit of burnt sienna in the mix just to darken the colour a little bit for the shadows on these pears. And then blending in with some with a damp brush just to soften the edges. Trick with painting things like pears, any kind of fruit really, is just to gradually build up the darker shadowy areas just to help define the three-dimensionality. Take your time, let the washes dry if you want to. Just adding some darker mix to the branch of the tree there. All these colours are mixed from those basic three colours. As I said earlier, just get to know your palette, practice mixing different colours and combinations and seeing what works best for you. This is burnt sienna on its own, just to just put in those dappley browny areas that you see on pears. Just taking a little bit more pigment, wet in wet, just to get a bit of variety. Just darkening a few areas just to create a little bit of shape to the pears. Just a few final touches on the leaves, tidy up a few bits and pieces, and I think we're pretty much done. Thank you so much for watching this demonstration. I hope you learned something from it. If you enjoyed it and found it useful, do give it a like, always helps with YouTube. Do subscribe and hit the notification bell for future videos, and thanks again for watching.